Good evening. I call to order the Monday, January 11, 2016 work session of the Swarthmore Borough Council, rather the legislative session of the Swarthmore Borough Council. I see all council members are present, as is the mayor. At this time, we would entertain public comment from anybody who wishes to address us. Come forward to the podium there, state your name, affiliation, if you are here because of an affiliation, and your address.
Hello, I'm Shari Stuber. I'm at 45 Paper Mill Road in Springfield, PA. And I'm here representing Transition Town Media, based at a local nonprofit based in Media, PA. And I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk to you about a new initiative that Transition Town Media is starting with the sponsorship of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission and the Delaware County Planning Department. It's called Solarized Greater Media, and its aim is to help residents in the media and surrounding municipalities get solar panels on their roof. It's a program actually that has been going on around the country in various cities. The most local ones here were in Mount Airy and in Allegheny County in Western PA. And it's been a very successful and award-winning program. So it actually does work to help residents get solar panels. The way it works is it's a group buy program. We actually vet the local installers and pick the best ones. And then we work with the financial institutions and to see if we can get favorable loan packages. And then we put that all together and have people sign up on our website to get free solar assessments. And then if they are eligible and they would like to purchase solar panels, they can get them at great discounts, something along the lines of 12 to 20% off the market prices. So it's a really exciting program. We're really hoping to get a lot of people signed up and get a lot of solar panels installed around the surrounding areas, including Swarthmore. We're going to have 5 informational events to let people know about this program. The first one is January 23rd in Penn State Brandywine. The second one is here in this office, the Swarthmore Borough Hall. That would be on February the 13th. This is a Saturday, and they're all 2 to 4 p.m. Then we'll also have them in Media, in Marple, and in Aston. So I would love to answer any questions that you all have. I think I've told you everything. I hope that's everything on my list. And I would love to also pass out some flyers if you would like to have some.
If you'd leave them with the borough manager,
All
that
right.
would be great.
Great.
Thank you.
Any questions?
And hopefully the fact that there'll be a session here in this building will be publicized.
Yes, we're going to be.
And that will help to publicize.
Great, that would be awesome. Who do I contact about helping to publicize it? I know the Swarthmorean will be putting something in there. And
Right, that would be it. And I don't know if it's an event that would appear on the borough website or not, but perhaps could be made to be such.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to?
Anybody else wish to address council this evening? The first name is S-A-R-I, last name is Stuber, S-T-E-U-B-E-R. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Any other public comment this evening? There being none, we have distributed to us the council meeting minutes of December 21st and 2015 and January 4, 2016. Is there a motion for their approval? Moved. So moved. Second? All those in favor of approving the minutes of those 2 meetings, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're approved. Members have received for review a resolution establishing policies and procedures for selection of consultants for PennDOT projects. Jane, could you tell folks a bit more about why this resolution is needed?
The borough has to advertise for consulting firm services for inspection of the work that will be occurring this spring or summer. The installation of sidewalks and the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. And PennDOT will be paying for those services as part of the grant that we got. And we follow their procedures for selection of the consultant. You'll note that the committee will be a minimum of council president, who has actually done this before, served on a committee like this before, the chair of the Public Works Committee, who will be Mr. Murphy, and myself. We can add people if they so desire. Dave and I can talk about that. We rank them in order, and then once PennDOT approves of that ranking, which we'll get to council can do that approval, then we enter into a price negotiation contract with the proposed consultant.
Do I remember correctly, we did this in connection with the underpass project?
We did it in connection with actually we used a similar procedure even when we selected the person to do the study on the bicycle and pedestrian walk before it started, so we've used it before, yes.
Is there a motion for adoption of Resolution 2016-01 establishing policies and procedures for selection of consultants for PennDOT projects?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
I did have a question. Jane, this is just specific to the project we're doing now.
Well, actually, if we get another grant, once we have the
We can
resolution
refer
done,
back to
and
the
I
resolution.
think that's why I left the general who would be
Okay.
on it, but I would think council would always want it to be at least those three people, because it's always going to be a public works type project, and then we can add people. So actually, it'd be
So-
nice, we didn't have to do this before, it's a new layer.
So this can stop, this can kind of stay as a living document, we can refer back to.
Yeah, I mean, unless PennDOT changes its requirements going forward.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
could happen.
Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah, so it's 4 small projects, it's not just for this project. Anything under, I think,
Under 150,000, okay.
right?
Any other questions? Thanks, Dave.
I had a question just to educate me. So the selecting the 3 people, 1, 2, 3 is competitive. Like you decide which is number 1, 2, and 3. Then once the number 1 person makes a bid, if we don't like their number, is there any opportunity to get a bid from 2 or 3, or?
I
do we-
think
do we always
PennDOT
have
will
to-
help you negotiate a price with them from my reading of this. This document does not say what happens if you can't come to an agreement. My guess is PennDOT will let you go to number 2.
I don't know, that's a good question.
It's an awkward procedure at best,
Yes.
and one that we had before.
Right.
Dealt with before. So that would be my guess. I don't think PennDOT would say, hey, you pick this person if the prices end up out of the realm of what we would expect them to be. This is a pretty small job. This should not be a huge contract.
These PennDOT pre-approved contractors, there's a percentage of the project price that often drives the engineering inspection fee. So in what may happen in practice is they're coming in around the same number because they know what that number is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and I think it's important to note, they do say that it's advisable to get your engineer to tell you before, who's not involved in the project, to give you an idea before what the cost should be. And we'll definitely do that before we start negotiating with them.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? All of those in favor of adopting Resolution 2016-01, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Sure, we just did that. I'm new. I'm not even sure. I won't say that. We'd have to go back and do something else with the last meeting. So, thank you. Although it's not on the agenda, I am this evening recommending to council that we set aside time at our work meeting on March 7th to discuss the recommendations of the Aging in Place Task Force. It seems to me that we need to have at least a general discussion of those recommendations before we then act on them. if that action may in the first instance being to forward them to the relevant committees of this body to look at them. But it seems to me that even before we would ask planning and zoning, for example, with some of the most significant ones, or general government with many of the others, and perhaps some of the others would go elsewhere, to look at them and to work on them, should have some sense from council as a whole as to what our sense of these things is. To recall, the task force made 22 recommendations to us under the general headings of social engagement, transportation and mobility, health and safety, housing, and planning and zoning. They specifically recommended that we appoint an implementation committee, that we fund a senior coordinator going forward that would be attached in some fashion to an existing or new nonprofit, that suggested that we hire a professional consultant to assist the borough in updating the zoning code, presumably in ways that would carry forward the recommendations of the task force as it related to zoning and land use. But I think we need to take our own step first to discuss it and get our mutual sense of the recommendations taken as a whole or specific ones. And I think it's best to do that in a work session rather than in a legislative session. I think those encouraging all of us to again read the recommendations, but also to read the report. And not only read the report, but read the attachments to the report, which provides certain of the professional advice or factual underpinning for the recommendations. So that I hope we all will have a chance to do that again before that discussion on the 7th. It's obvious, I think, if anyone, as we all have read them, the most perhaps significant in terms of its effect on the borough recommendations have to do with land use and with zoning. And so I think that area in particular, before we would ask the Planning and Zoning Committee or the Planning Commission to begin to think about or address what had been recommended, I think both that committee and that commission ought to have some idea of what this council, as presently constituted, thinks about those things. And not to have decided in advance what we think, but nevertheless to give guidance elsewhere. I don't know that they could be as effective in doing what they would be asked to do than we would be if they have a sense of where we're coming from. So that having been said, so that discussion, subject to the views of anybody else who thinks that we might proceed differently, will be on the agenda for our work session on the 7th of that having been said, we turn to the Finance Committee.
Environment, actually.
It's what happens when you have trifocals. The Environment Committee, I'm sorry, Lauren, please.
Is there a microphone?
I remembered it. I don't actually have that much to say. Do I do the appointments now, or do they all? Okay. So I'm appointing 2 people to the EAC. John Penders is re-upping, and also Doug Hasbrook. Sorry, and then we're probably going to have another person on it, but we're still talking to them about it. So we might have another appointee next month. And then the tree committee, Michael Matotek and Elliot Birch. And
You should vote.
Yeah, so you need a
okay.
motion to appoint them.
Okay.
You can do them what you just said. I got it.
Do we
I
all?
don't need to say it again.
I second the motion.
Is there any question or discussion about the motion to appoint those individuals as they have been named or reappointed in that case? There being none, all those in favor of the appointment of those persons to the position identified, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are appointed.
That's it?
That's it. Thank you.
You ready for me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Moving on to the Finance Committee first, just like to talk briefly about the financial report for December of 2015. Obviously, that was the end of the year. I think the year turned out pretty well. Revenues ended up 80,000 better than budgeted, and expenditures 40,000 less, which is the way you want it to go. I think it's worth commenting on the revenues is obviously there's divergence in versus budget all across. But the most significant one, probably worth talking about, is building permits were about 120,000 more than budgeted, and that was the same as last year, obviously with all the building going on. And I think it's probably worth noting that if you took that away and basically still would be very close to being balanced. So I think it's all credit to Jane and team that the expenditures, 40,000 less than we budgeted. So I think, all credit to them. So I think from that point of view, again, we ended up about 120,000 better than had budgeted. Obviously, the building permits are not things you can necessarily count on, but I think the fact that we did better than that is a good statement going forward. So anyway, I thought I'd just highlight that, and we did end the year with a balance of $540,861. So, are there any questions about the financial report? No?
I had just
Yes.
one. So that the balance in 2015 is less than than the beginning because there was an intentional spend down.
Yes, exactly, and that's a good question. It's worth mentioning that essentially we've had fund balances closer to 10%, and really the goal is to have kind of 6 to 8%. So that's because it is the borough's money, and it doesn't, having excess reserves, while in some entities make sense, in the public one, you want to make sure that what you're collecting is being used. So we're trying to balance the idea of having not too much of a fund balance with prudence, and we've, using the boilerplate of what other places utilize, we've kind of come up with a 6 to 8. So that's what we target sort of in a longer term point of view. So yes, we did intentionally, and we will intentionally this year also be bringing it down a bit, because obviously it's higher than 10%.
That's great. And that reduces the burden on the taxpayer.
Ideally, yes.
You just have to be careful, because as Michael was saying, when your extra revenue is from things that aren't going to continue
Right.
year after year, if you don't, if your tax rate stays low, eventually it's going to catch up with you, that you're not bringing in enough revenue to support just your normal operating expenses. So it's kind of a balance.
Yeah. So anyway, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on now to the bills to pay, and checks and wires transfers to ratify. Hopefully everyone's got a chance to look at the bills to pay. I'm going to make a motion to approve bills to pay of $305,715.30. Are there any questions? Are you saying second?
Second. Any discussion, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Payment of those bills is approved.
Okay, now I'm going to move on to wire transfers and transactions to ratify. Typically, the transactions have been one, and there's 3 this time. Can I just
Right,
make it
so-
into one total payment, or do I have to
Sure,
specifically
absolutely.
call them out?
No, you can say
Okay, I can use this on there. Okay, so hopefully everyone's got a chance to look at the wire transactions and the transactions to ratify. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'd like to make a motion to approve wire transactions of $3,976.59 and transactions totaling $11,730.53. Sorry.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor of those transfers, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The payment is approved.
Okay. Okay, now I'm going to move on to make a motion to appoint Maria Simos to be to the Swarthmore Borough Authority. Are there any questions or seconds?
A second.
Any question or discussion? All those in favor of that appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? She is appointed.
Great. Okay, and then finally, something that we've talked about as it relates to Nancy Carullo's job, and we wanted to put it into the record, which was that previously, as the tax collector, she received for tax certificates and tax duplicates, $10 and $5 each, which netted approximately $2,200 a year. And we discussed previously that we would continue to allow her to do that even though her job title has changed. And so I wanted to make that public and have a discussion. And if we have to make a motion specifically or not, or just to have it in the minutes is maybe sufficient.
You're not changing the status quo.
So unless, I know we talked about it before, but I don't know if there's any other questions or comments or thoughts about that. I'd be happy to discuss it this time.
How much your tax bill costs $5?
Right. So that's essentially what that is.
Did
A
we?
lot of people are losing them apparently, or need them.
Well, actually, what it is kind of interesting, like the mortgage companies, they'll just send her a check for thousands of dollars. And they'll give her the names, and she actually has to pull each individual folio.
I see, okay.
And the bank gets charged $5 for each one that she has to pull. So
That's where the net
yeah,
comes from.
so she gets, I think, a large percentage of the taxes all
I
come
see.
in together from the mortgage and big banks and mortgage companies.
Did we approve the financial report?
We did not.
Oh, okay.
We sometimes fudge that with this other stuff, but you're welcome to.
Is there a
Should I make a motion to approve the financial report
If you would,
for December 2015?
Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of...
Was there a second?
I
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of approving the financial report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
And Finance Committee will not be meeting this month. That's all.
And we did the, yes, okay. General government.
The only thing I have to report for general government is that we did talk about the dates. And so the first meeting, since our meetings are on the third Monday at 8:30 in the morning here, that falls on Martin Luther King Day, so we're going to move it to January 19th
Okay, thank you.
at 8:30 in the morning. And we're also going to move the February meeting, because that falls on President's Day, to February 17th. All the other ones will be on the third Monday.
Are those, Jane, are those the dates that, as revised, that in fact appear in the minutes of the last meeting or not?
No, they don't. So,
Okay.
no, I'll put them in this.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, thanks.
I don't think we've advertised the committee meetings yet, so we'll make that.
Okay, good.
That's all we have to report.
Thank you. Well, I think your work lies ahead of you. Planning and zoning.
I make a motion to reappoint Rex Bryan and John Penders to the Planning Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of reappointing to Rex Bryan and John Penders to the Planning Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are reappointed.
And I have another motion to reappoint Matthew Ryan to the Zoning Hearing Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? It's wonderful that these folks, in each case, and those previously mentioned, have agreed to continue to serve. All those in favor of reappointing Mr. Ryan to the Zoning Hearing Board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? He's reappointed.
I will send a note to the paper about the vacancies on the zoning hearing board for an alternate, which we had all last year. And on the planning commission, you have any friends who they're dying to serve, make sure they have.
What about the pension committee, which we also?
Other than pension committee.
Okay.
There's no terms on there, so, but yeah.
Okay. That'd be great.
Thanks.
And as our solicitor mentioned, I guess the last meeting, that we can now have alternates to the planning commission. So that if there's interest greater than the number of vacancies, they could be alternates. Public safety.
Yes, I move that council reappoint Chris Fallon to a 6-year term on the Civil Service Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question,
Yes.
maybe for the solicitor. I'm actually on that commission, so I don't know if I should vote.
I think there's not a problem with that. You're allowed to have one overlap between a council member. One member of the Civil Service Commission can also be a member of council. So there's, it's.
And I can vote on him being
Yeah,
reappointed?
yeah, it's
Okay.
expressly authorized to have his dual roles, so.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All those in favor of that appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? He is appointed. Thank you. Public safety?
Yes, continuing, we recently received from Police Chief Brian Craig the information concerning police department activity for reporting year 2015. And I'm not going to go through the whole report, but just mention a couple of things very interesting. Overall, crime is down in the borough. It's actually at a 5-year low. This includes both more serious crimes like assault, robbery, that sort of thing, and less serious crimes such as vandalism, driving under the influence. So that's an interesting statistic. I'm not sure what it means, but anyway, things are moving in the right direction, I guess. And the only other thing I wanted to mention publicly is that Sergeant Bill Thomas will be celebrating 25 years of service on the police force this year. And Officer Roger Hinckley and Officer Edwin Klein will be celebrating 20 years of service on the force this year in 2016. And one last thing from Chief Craig's report, the number of vacation or vacant property checks was the highest in 2015 than it's ever been since that program was implemented. So good work, Chief and the department. The Public Safety Committee will be meeting this month, the third Tuesday, as we normally do. That'll be January 19th, 7:30 p.m. here in Borough Hall. And there are going to be at least 3 things on the agenda. One is a traffic calming proposal for Yale Avenue, which we will be receiving from the Traffic Advisory Committee. The other is beginning our discussion of the renewal of the contract that the Swarthmore Police Department, the Borough of Swarthmore has with Rutledge to provide police services to Rutledge. We're just going to begin that discussion. That contract expires the end of 2016. And then there are some Swarthmore Fire and Protective Association issues that we need to discuss as well.
All right.
That's it.
At a recent meeting, I hate to raise the subject of parking, it's so near and dear to everybody's heart, but at a recent meeting, Scott Richardson made, again, an appeal, and he made a number of occasions in the past, that there be, by permit system or otherwise, some concession, I'm trying to find the word.
Accommodation.
Accommodation, there's the word. Be made to employees of borough business establishments. And I know that is a subject which, when your committee in the past had before it, and we have what we have. And I'm not urging any further consideration of that issue as it relates to that cohort of people, but nevertheless, I wanted to note that appeal was made one more time. We know from our prior discussions of this that there are many competing issues and interests related to parking. We note that I note during the day the number of cars that now park down Park Avenue, who are obviously, whether they're commuters or people who work in town, that's not obvious to me, that some folks are avoiding the meter system altogether by parking in Huttway, which is legal parking at the time of day they're there. But I just wanted to take note of the fact that renewed request was made.
Yeah, it's a fair point, David, and I think that's something that we probably should take up again, or at least consider again. Again, not prejudging.
Yeah.
We gave it a lot of consideration over the past couple of years, but it's probably worth thinking about, especially the virtue of the current regime is that we can change things by resolution. We don't have to pass a new ordinance, so we do have more flexibility. But again, I think that's something, you're right, that is worthy of some discussion anyway.
Okay.
Thanks.
I don't know when it will happen. Jane will have the dates better in mind than I do. But there's going to come a time very shortly when, for train purposes, Swarthmore is going to be the end of the line. And so we're going to find, I think, lots of people who take the train to town will be coming to Swarthmore as the end of the line, looking for a place to park. So I think if that, for that reason only, we, at least for the period of time that Swarthmore is the end of the line, the parking situation in town may become more complicated. Is that it?
That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Mayor. Or Public Works, as the case may be.
That's me.
That's you.
Well, it was you, so
No,
I
I know.
don't have a lot to report. Jane, are there any appointments that roll up on we will not meet in January. We will meet next February 25th at 8:30 a.m. right here. I'm out of town this month, so
Okay.
That's all I have.
Now, Mayor. Sorry.
Well, now it's the time for the state of the borough.
We've been waiting.
So, President Grove, distinguished council members, Madam Manager, and citizens of Swarthmore. The state of the borough is strong. And it's strong for a couple of reasons. It's strong because we have systems in place that work well. We have professionals who work for us in the borough offices who do a great job. But the major reason that it runs so well is because we have volunteers who are willing to give their time to make the borough a better place. So whether it's people with the fire department, or whether it's people like you who sit on council or in one of the other committees, or do various things during the borough, it's the sort of that volunteer effort that sort of gets at that sort of funny idea of community. Community is one of those words that we all think we know what it is, but it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. But I would say that one of the things about community is that people, I think, have an understanding that they need to work for it, that there's something about it that involves effort, and that what makes it all the more satisfying for all of us. So 2015 was really quite a good year for the borough. The roundabout, which was obviously very controversial up to the point where it actually opened, is functioning beautifully. It keeps traffic moving. Traffic doesn't stop and start. There have been no reported accidents in the roundabout. She crosses his fingers. And I think almost more importantly, is that it allows people to cross at the crosswalks safely, and people do cross that area where they never crossed before, and that's functioning really well. The inn obviously is coming, and that's going to give even more reason to cross there. When that comes, the bookstore is scheduled to move down into the new building over spring break, so that'll actually open first before the rest of the restaurant and the inn, and we're obviously looking forward to that. Also, speaking of volunteers, a group of local citizens called Hoops Renaissance raised some $60,000 and built 2 brand new basketball courts behind SRS. It's a great addition to the town and already well used even in the wintertime. Great to see. We have some vacancies in town, but we also have new things that popped up. I think Warehouse 3, which kind of snuck up on everybody, is a great new venue in town, and if not only for the sort of antiques that he sells, but his commitment to having local music play live music on weekends in the space, and it's a very cool and good thing. Parking was another controversial thing coming into through last year, and I would say that it does, the adjustments that were made to the borough do what it's supposed to do. It allows people to have confidence that when they drive into the borough to go shopping during the day, there's a place for them to park, which is kind of what we were, I think was a major consideration. So whether the people who park up Park Avenue, they're getting a little more exercise as they walk down into town, that's not a bad thing. I would encourage council to think seriously about some sort of accommodation for the people who work in town for parking, figuring out a way to kind of make that work. Because not only is parking going to become more difficult when we're at the end of the line in the summertime, but we'll have construction of Central Park Swarthmore happening in the springtime, as soon as March, where the borough parking lot, the main parking lot, will be offline for some 45 days or somewhere along those lines. So if, we've said often that parking is not a revenue-driven thing. We're not trying to make more money from it necessarily. So I think it's something that I would encourage council to take seriously, this idea of some level of thing. And I think there's different ways of doing it, but we do see that there are people who park right in front of their stores so they can feed the meters, which is kind of antithetical to what we had in mind going forward. Other accomplishments during the year, Aging in Place Task Force. What a great thing that turned out to be. Antor Grosser ran a great committee. They worked very hard for a year and came up with quite a document, which I think you're correct, David, that the council should consider it and discuss it in March. I would note that all the members of the task force are quite willing to be involved in these discussions and happy to answer questions or anything that council has going forward. And I suggest that we invite them to the meeting when it will be to discuss the first meeting in March. There were changes at the college. Connie Overford did a great job as the interim president. Val Smith, the new president of the college, reached out to the borough as soon as she was in town and made it clear that she and Greg Brown, who's her vice president for administration and finance, understood the sort of town-gown relationship and how important it was for the town to be successful as well as the college. So I think that's good news for us as we move forward. I wanted to put a note of thanks in to Ralph Jacobs and Elizabeth Knapp, who served so ably for 8 years on council and were involved in so many things going forward. I wanted to mention Beth Gross, who stepped down as editor of the Swarthmorian, but she did for I'm not even sure how many years. But luckily she's still in town. We haven't lost her completely. We just don't have her necessarily writing things. In terms of 2016, I'm really looking forward to further steps in making the borough more pedestrian friendly. My hope is that people will understand that they're actually supposed to stop their cars at stop signs and that they're supposed to yield to pedestrians who are in crosswalks. The borough is making concrete moves in this way with the implementation of some of the things from the bicycle and pedestrian task force, which will involve new intersections in particularly difficult places two on Yale, one at Rutgers and one at Harvard, and the other at Harvard and Chester Road. So those will be sort of a physical manifestation of, along with the roundabout, about pedestrian friendliness. And my hope is that Swarthmore becomes known as a place where pedestrians have right away, and certainly that gets back to that idea of community. So I look forward to 2016. A lot of interesting things will be happening. I mentioned before the Central Park Swarthmore that will create new green space and gathering space in the town for borough residents. It will straighten out some of the parking issues that are in that. We lose a few spots, but we also get spots that are actually the proper size, and maybe we'll get fewer dings in our car and actually park in the lot. And I think that the addition of the amphitheater, the small amphitheater, is going to be a great addition to almost all the things that happen in the borough. We had the Community Arts Center had their street festival here this past year, which I think was a great success. We're already talking about bringing it back again in 2016, but this time moving up to Park Avenue. So it would have the amphitheater could certainly serve something like that in a very nice way. And to sum up, I want to stress this idea that we want community. We want to live in a place where we feel that kind of palpable sense of community, and remind everybody that it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes people getting out of their houses and coming out and actually spending time on various things to make the borough a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing I would add to your, which I think furthers that in an interesting way, the kind of intergenerational interaction that is desirable is in fact the farmer's market. Because to go there on a Saturday, the range of people who one finds there and falls into conversation with provides a benefit, well in addition to what one can actually buy when one is there. So I think that continues to be a positive social interaction. But thank you, Mayor, again. Borough Manager, report.
Just moving backwards on the manager's report, thank you. The Planning Commission is not meeting in January. The Planning Commission will meet in February for two rather large land development applications, both of them in final phase. One is for the PPR, NPPR, which is a new dormitory, which most of you on council were here. And so it was just a few months ago that you approved preliminary. I think they said that they were moving pretty quickly. I believe they want to occupy that dormitory in 2017. They don't have a lot of time. The Cunningham Field parking lot, some of you were not on council. The preliminary for that was approved in 2012. There's a 5-year window for the applicant to come back for final land development, and that has been submitted. I don't know that there's any great reason for the Planning and Zoning Committee to meet beforehand. Hopefully it'll I don't even know if these are both going to make it they're on the agenda for February 17th. I don't know if they'll both be heard, but probably after that you'll want to meet and discuss whatever the Planning Commission has to say.
So do we need to say here that there is no planning and
You don't have to say anything now, just, yeah, I mean, if you know of other things on the agenda, that's fine. Normally, we would meet to discuss pending zoning hearing board applications, but that's so that you could report back to council, and we kind of would miss that window on the one that's pending. I did want to report on the recycling. It's kind of interesting that the trash in the borough is almost exactly the same as it was in 2014. I just thought that was, within 10 tons. I thought that was sort of interesting. Recycling is down. It's been going down steadily. This is the first year we've had a fairly 20-ton fall off on curbside commingled, which was a little bit of a surprise. We haven't really reinforced our recycling regulations recently, so I think maybe we'll try and do that. It seems to me that every house does have recycling bins out on recycling day, so I don't know that there's too much more we can do. In the past, we've sort of chalked it up to many fewer people getting reading material, paper reading material. Although I think that's balanced a little bit with people buying things online being delivered in cardboard. And we do want to make sure that everybody is recycling cardboard. And so we'll probably do a little bit of public education on that. We do get reimbursed by the state. We get extra money on what's called our performance grant for every ton that we recycle. So we don't want to let that slip too much. We want to keep the recycling numbers up as much as we can. We used to have a recycling committee, but they kind of, once we sort of institutionalized what was going on with recycling, it wasn't much for them to do. So I think it's something we can handle in-house, make sure that both individuals and all of our businesses are recycling as well.
Okay. Given the number of things I see at next door Swarthmore that are being recycled in that fashion, maybe it's not, maybe it's just moving from house to house.
What,
Carb alerts.
oh, the carb alerts, yeah, well, and there was a discussion on pizza boxes, which are recyclable, by the way.
Right.
Hopefully, they are recyclable, yeah, not with cheese in them, but if you remove the cheese, they're very recyclable.
Oil's okay.
Yeah, and we actually know our numbers are down. For those of you who recycle paper and cardboard at the recycling center, which is actually a good thing for the borough because we make money on that, we're not even getting that picked up once a month anymore because we don't have enough material. So that's a pretty good indication that things are going, yeah.
I had, one of the recommendations of the Aging Place Task Force was directed, or concerned directed, the difficulty one experiences of whatever age you are in moving from the inbound and outbound platforms at the train station. And I asked Jane if she would contact SEPTA to see if there was any planning, because obviously it's not ADA compliant, among other things. In addition to being awkward, ask if SEPTA had any plans afoot that might be addressed to that. And could you report on what you've learned to this point? Which
I don't
isn't-
think it's probably public. I don't think that I feel like I have an official SEPTA word.
So Jane alone will have the information that she
No, I
would-
just, I don't feel comfortable based on one conversation with
Yeah,
one
understand.
planner
So,
to
at least we can
SEPTA might
say,
or might not do. We can certainly say we
of
asked.
all recommendations
Classic.
made by the Aging Place Task Force on which we have acted, to this point, we can't report on because it's secret.
I don't know that it's secret. I just don't think you can speak for a public agency.
No,
All the
Yeah,
other-
SEPTA does advertise us as a handicap accessible
They do.
station.
They do, because you can get off the train.
They have the raise.
Yeah, right.
But in any event.
But you can't get from the southbound to the
Side to side.
northbound. That's not what.
But Jane,
It takes a half a mile.
Jane is
No,
continuing.
they're not saying that it's accessible that way. Handicap accessible to them means you can get to the platform however you get there, and once you're there, you can get on the train, and it is accessible that way.
Okay. But at some point, we may learn something more on that subject that Jane will be free to report. Bob, solicitor,
Thank you, I don't have anything tonight.
is there any other business to come before us tonight? There being none,
We adjourn.
second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.